was a cold and quiet night. The wind howled outside Jack's cabin like a hungry animal. The stars above were hidden behind thick clouds. Jack sat alone by the heater, sipping a hot drink made from dried herbs. He had no visitors, no neighbors. Nearby, just silence and the soft hum of the power core under the floor. Then he heard it. A sound, soft, almost like scratching. He looked toward the door. Another scratch, then a weak knock. Jack slowly stood up, grabbing his old plasma cutter just in case. He opened the heavy steel door and froze. There she was, an alien woman, tall and thin, her body shaking from the cold. Her skin was pale violet, covered in bruises and dirt. Her clothes were torn, barely hanging on her frame. She looked up at him with glowing golden eyes, then collapsed right at his feet. Jack dropped the cutter and rushed to catch her. He had never seen this species up close before. She was one of the forbidden kinds, the ones hunted and locked away. Rumors said they were dangerous, violent, untrustworthy. But this woman looked like she hadn't eaten in days. He picked her up carefully and carried her inside. She was so light, too light. Jack laid her on the floor near the heater and checked her pulse. It was weak, but she was alive. Her lips moved slightly and she whispered just one word. Help. That word broke something in Jack's chest. He grabbed a thermal blanket and wrapped it around her, then ran to the kitchen and brought out a nutrient pack. He gently lifted her head and helped her drink. She sipped slowly, eyes half open, looking at him like he was a ghost. You're safe, Jack said softly. I won't hurt you. Her body trembled harder, maybe from fear, maybe from cold. But she didn't pull away. Jack noticed metal marks on her wrists. Old shackles, scars, thin, and deep lined her back and arms. Whoever had her before treated her like a slave. He didn't ask questions, not yet. He helped her sit up and gave her more food. After a few bites, she stopped. She looked at him and slowly moved back, scared, as if she thought he would demand something in return. Jack shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Only silence and tired eyes. Jack made a soft bed for her in the corner. She hesitated at first, but then curled up under the blanket. Like a scared child, she kept watching him, not blinking, not trusting. That night, Jack didn't sleep much. He sat by the door, thinking. He had no idea who she was or what danger she brought. But something inside him had already decided. He couldn't let her die. Morning came, cold and gray. The woman still slept, breathing slowly. Jack left a bowl of warm broth near her and worked outside cutting wood. When he returned, the bowl was empty, and she was sitting up, alert, but still silent. He sat across from her and spoke gently. Do you have a name? She didn't answer, but after a long pause, her lips moved. Lyra. Jack smiled a little. I'm Jack. No handshake, no smile in return. But her shoulders relaxed just slightly. He asked nothing more. Didn't press her. Instead, he showed her where the bathroom was, where the food was, and then gave her space. 3 days passed. Each day, she ate more, moved more, but never left the cabin. Each night, Jack saw her staring out the small window, as if afraid someone might come looking, and one night, just before sleep, she whispered a question. Why, not afraid of me? Jack looked at her gently. Because you're not a monster. Her eyes filled with tears, quiet, shining tears, but she wiped them quickly, like she wasn't allowed to feel anything. That was the moment everything began to change, not just for her, but for Jack too. He didn't know her story, didn't know where she came from, but he had a feeling. This was no ordinary meeting, and this starving, frightened alien woman at his door was going to change his life forever. For the first time in a long while, Jack wasn't alone, but he didn't know if that was a good thing or bad. The alien woman, Lyra, still barely spoke. She moved like a ghost, silent and careful, like she didn't belong. She flinched at sudden sounds, even soft ones like a cup being set down, and when Jack reached too quickly to pass her something, she pulled away fast, as if expecting to be hit. She was healing, slowly. Her bruises had faded, and her cuts were no longer open. She didn't cry, not once, but her eyes often looked wet, like she had cried too much in the past and had nothing left now. Jack never asked what happened to her. Not yet. He let her eat, rest, and walk. Around the cabin at her own pace. Some days she stood by the window just staring into the forest. One evening, Jack noticed her standing barefoot in the cold. She was outside, her hands pressed against a tree, eyes closed. He walked out to bring her inside, but stopped when he heard her whispering something. Not English. Something alien. Something soft and full of pain. When she noticed him, she stepped back, ashamed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely there. Jack shook his head. "You don't have to be sorry." He offered her his jacket, and she didn't pull away this time. She let him drape it around her shoulders, a small sign of trust. But to Jack, it meant everything. The next day, he brought out a small old tablet. It had translation programs and learning modules. "I can teach you more words," he said. "If you want." She hesitated, then nodded once. Each night after dinner, Jack showed her simple words: chair, window, sleep, warm. She repeated them slowly, carefully, and when she said a word right, Jack smiled. That smile made her cheeks change color, just slightly. Maybe that was her version of blushing. One night, Jack caught her staring at him as he repaired a broken heater panel. She looked confused and finally asked in broken English, "Why, help me?" Jack looked up from his tools and shrugged. "You were hungry, cold and alone," he said. "What kind of person would I be if I turned you away?" She tilted her head, thinking deeply. "Most would," she whispered. "I'm not most," Jack replied. That made her smile, just a little. It was the first real smile he had seen from her. It was weak, unsure but beautiful, like a flower blooming after a long winter. But not everything was peaceful. Jack was beginning to worry. Drones had passed overhead twice in the last few days. He saw their shadows against the trees. They were looking for something or someone. Jack reinforced the cabin's security. He set up a scanner blocker and reprogrammed his power cord to mask life signs. Lyra watched silently, knowing what it meant. She was still being hunted that night. She sat across from him near the fire. "I can go," she said. "You safe if I leave?" Jack looked at her with steady eyes. "No," he said firmly. "You're safe here." She looked down, hands shaking. "You don't understand," she said. "They kill humans who hide us." "I understand," Jack said, "but I don't care." Silence followed. Then, in a voice that broke slightly, she whispered, "No one ever chose me before." Jack stood and walked over to her. He knelt beside her, gently taking her hand. "I'm choosing you now," he said. "And I'll keep choosing you." Lyra looked at their hands, then at his face. She didn't pull away. She held on tighter. From that night on, something changed. She spoke more during lessons, helped with small tasks around the cabin. She even laughed once when Jack spilled food all over his shirt. Her laugh was strange and beautiful, like music from another world. And Jack knew then, he was no longer helping a stranger. He was sharing his life with someone he cared about. One morning, she surprised him by cooking something, a warm, thick soup using forest roots and dried meat. She had never cooked before. Jack smiled as he tasted it. "Delicious," he said. Lyra's eyes sparkled. "Learned from you." Later, that evening, she brought out an old piece of cloth from her bag. It was folded and worn with strange markings. "This," she said softly, "my people's prayer cloth. We use when we thank." She placed it on the table and looked at him with deep, shining eyes. "I thank you." Jack didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. He just sat with her, beside the fire, two souls from different worlds, no longer strangers, just beginning something neither of them understood fully yet. but both willing to see where it would lead. The wind had changed. It no longer whispered through the trees. Now it carried the distant sound of humming, faint but sharp. Jack stood outside his cabin, frowning at the sky. There it was again, a flicker of movement above the clouds. Too fast for a bird, too smooth for a wild drone. His stomach tightened. Back inside, Lara was cleaning the small table. She had gotten better. She moved without fear now. Sometimes she even hummed softly when she worked. But Jack's face turned serious as he stepped in. "Lyra," he said, "stay away from the windows today." She paused, sensing the change in his voice. "What's wrong?" she asked. He glanced at the scanner by the wall. It blinked red for a moment. "Drones, government ones," Jack said. "They're searching this area." Lyra's eyes widened. She backed away from the light, her whole body shaking. "They found me," she whispered. Jack walked over quickly, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Not yet," he said. "But we need to be careful now." The mood shifted in the cabin. Jack turned off all non-essential systems. He activated an old cloaking signal to block life signs. They would have to speak quietly, move carefully. For the first time in days, Lyra looked scared again. Not just of being caught, but of Jack being punished because of her. That night, Jack didn't sleep. He stayed up watching the scanner, his plasma rifle loaded beside him. He hadn't used it in years, but he would, if it meant protecting her. Lyra sat in the corner, her knees pulled to her chest. "I should have left," she whispered. Jack shook his head, not looking away from the screen. "If you had, you'd be dead," he said, "and I'd be alone." She slowly stood and walked to him. "What if they find us?" Jack looked at her finally. "Then I'll run with you." She blinked like she didn't understand. "Why?" she asked again, voice breaking. "You're not my kind, not my blood." Jack took a breath, then said something simple. "You don't have to be my kind to matter." For a long moment, Lyra didn't move. Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture from her world. He could tell it meant something deep. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me." But the danger wasn't gone. The next day, a ship flew low over the forest. Its lights scanned the trees. Its engines roared across the sky. Jack and Lyra hid in the underground cellar he had built long ago. It was cramped, dark, and smelled of metal and earth. But it was safe. For now, inside the cellar, Lyra's breathing was fast. Jack held her hand, trying to calm her. "You said before," she began, "that I'm safe with you." Jack nodded. "Even now?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. She looked at him with tears forming in her eyes. "No one ever protected me," she said. "Not even my own." Jack didn't respond with words. He simply pulled her closer, letting her feel that she wasn't alone anymore. When they came out hours later, the sky was quiet again, but something had changed. Lyra wasn't just hiding now. She was planning to fight. She asked Jack how scanners worked. She asked where weak spots were in patrol ships. Jack realized she wasn't thinking of running anymore. She was thinking of surviving and protecting him too. That night, she showed him something hidden beneath her clothes, a small mark, glowing softly. Her people's royal crest. Jack stared at it, shocked. "Your royalty?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I was supposed to lead my people," she whispered. "But they sold me, because I loved peace, not war." Jack was stunned. All this time, the broken woman he found on his doorstep. She was a queen in exile, a leader with no people, a heart full of scars. "You're not just running from hunters," he said. "You're running from your past." Lyra nodded. "I failed them, but I don't want to fail you." He didn't know what to say, but he felt it deep inside. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was something stronger, something pulling them together, even if the galaxy wanted them apart. Outside, the night had fallen again. The scanner blinked once, then stayed green. They were safe for now. But Jack knew it wouldn't last. Sooner or later, someone would find her again. And when they did, he would be ready, because now Lyra wasn't just a stranger. She wasn't just an alien. She was someone who mattered to him, and he would fight for her, no matter the cost. The cabin was quiet again, but the silence didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like the calm before a storm. Jack worked outside, chopping wood for the fire. Lyra sat inside, staring at her hands. They were no longer bruised, no longer bleeding, but she still didn't feel healed. Her thoughts were heavy. She had been hiding for so long, hiding from the world, from hunters, but also from Jack, because she hadn't told him the truth, not all of it. That night, Jack cooked dinner like always. He handed her a bowl and sat down across from her. Lyra didn't eat. She just watched him. His hair was messy. His shirt had small oil stains. He was quiet, kind, and tired. But he had never once asked for anything in return. She couldn't take it anymore. "I need to show you something," she whispered. Jack looked up, surprised. Lyra stood slowly and lifted her sleeve. A soft blue glow came from her forearm. A hidden mark, almost like a tattoo. It pulsed with faint light, ancient script circling it. Jack leaned closer, frowning. "What is that?" he asked. She swallowed, hard. "This is my birthmark, my people's seal." Jack blinked, confused. "You're marked by a royal bloodline?" Lyra nodded slowly, her voice low. "I was next in line to lead my people." Jack stared, trying to understand. "You're a princess?" "No," she said quickly. "Not anymore." He tilted his head. "What happened?" She sat down and looked at the fire. "I was born to a proud family, but I refused war. My people, they wanted to fight humans, conquer colonies, claim land. I wanted peace. They called me weak, unfit, ashamed to the bloodline." Her hands trembled. "They betrayed me, sold me to a labor planet where no one would ever find me. I begged, cried, but they didn't care. I became just another prisoner." Jack's chest tightened. "You were punished for wanting peace," he said slowly. Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining. "Yes, and if they find me again, they'll finish what they started." She waited for him to speak. Maybe she thought he'd push her away. Maybe he'd ask her to leave before the trouble reached him too. But Jack said nothing. Instead, he leaned forward, picked up her hand, and gently ran his thumb over the glowing seal. "I don't care about your bloodline," he said. "You're not royalty to me, Lyra. You're you." Her throat tightened. No one had ever seen her like that. Not as a princess, not as a traitor, but just as a person. "You're not afraid?" she asked softly. Jack shook his head. "I was more afraid when I had no one to talk to," he said, smiling gently. "And now, I'd rather be hunted than lonely." That made her laugh. Quiet, broken but real. She looked at him, heart full of emotion. "I should have told you before," she said. He nodded. "Maybe. But you told me now." She reached out and touched his face. It was a gentle touch, like she was still testing if this was real. "Why are you this kind?" she asked, almost in wonder. Jack chuckled softly. "I ask myself that every time I fix your broken boots," he joked. Lyra laughed again, covering her mouth. It was the kind of laugh that had never existed in her old life. But their moment was interrupted. The scanner beeped once, quick and sharp. Jack's smile vanished. He stood quickly and checked the signal. A patrol ship had entered the zone, still distant, but moving fast. Lyra stood behind him, suddenly, stiff. "They're close," she whispered. Jack looked at her, calm but serious. "Then we prepare." He opened a panel beneath the floor, revealing a hidden case. Inside was an emergency beacon and 2 oxygen masks. "If things go bad, we run," he said. "Through the tunnel behind the shed?" She nodded, but her hand gripped his arm tightly. "I don't want to run anymore." she said. Jack looked at her. Then we fight. They spent the rest of the night quietly reinforcing the cabin. Lyra helped without being asked. She knew how to seal doors, block sensors, and jam signals. She wasn't just a royal. She was trained for leadership, for survival. As they finished, she looked at Jack and said something in her native tongue. He didn't understand it, but he knew what it meant. She was calling him something more than just protector, something more than friend. "You're my home now," she whispered in English. Jack didn't say anything. He just took her hand and held it tightly as the stars above watched them, knowing that soon their story would be tested like never before, but they were ready. Together. The skies were too quiet. That kind of silence never lasted on a frontier planet. Jack stood outside the cabin with a rifle across his shoulder. He scanned the treetops, his jaw tight. The scanner hadn't beeped in hours, but his gut told him something was coming. Lyra watched him from the window. Her fingers curled around the wooden edge. She could feel it too, the change in the air. The forest didn't sing today. No birds, no animals. Even nature was holding its breath. By nightfall, Jack had locked every door, covered the windows, and activated the hidden alarm tripwires in the woods. They ate in silence, both listening for sounds that didn't belong. It came at midnight, a faint pulse in the scanner, then a red flash. "They're here," Jack said quietly. Lyra stood slowly, calm but ready. "How many?" "She asked." Jack checked the screen. "2, but their heat signatures are large, probably armored." Lyra's breath caught. "Bounty hunters," she whispered. "Not patrol." "Worse," Jack added. They moved like shadows. One hunter approached the front door. Scanning the lock, the other circled the cabin, a motion sensor in hand. Their suits were dark and plated, faces hidden behind glowing helmets. They didn't speak. They were professionals. Silent, deadly, efficient. Jack handed Lyra a small energy knife. "Hide in the cellar," he whispered. She shook her head. "No." "If they see you, they'll take you," he said, his voice tight. "If they kill you," she replied, "then I won't be alive anyway." He wanted to argue, but there was no time. The front door shook. Boom. One heavy kick, then a second. Boom. It cracked. Jack raised his rifle, aiming for the door. Lyra crouched beside the back entrance, ready to ambush. The third. Boom. Broke the door open. Smoke poured in, followed by a glowing stun grenade. Jack kicked it away just in time and fired. The first blast hit the intruder's shoulder, knocking him sideways, but he didn't fall. He rolled and fired back, plasma rounds tearing through the wall. Jack ducked, heart pounding. The second, Hunter kicked in the back door, only to be met with a sudden slash. Lyra leapt at him, her blade cutting across his chest plate. He roared, surprised at her speed. She ducked low and stabbed at his leg. He slammed her back with a heavy arm, but she rolled and dodged. Jack shot again, hitting the first hunter in the leg. The man screamed and dropped, but before Jack could celebrate, the other one fired. The shot hit Jack's side, sending him crashing into the wall. "Jack!" Lyra screamed. She ran to him, shielding his body with her own. The second hunter stepped forward, weapon raised. "Hand her over," he growled, "and I might let you live." Jack's eyes burned with pain. Blood stained his shirt. But he still tried to stand. "I'd rather die," he spat. The hunter smirked. "Fine by me." He aimed, but before he could shoot, Lyra raised her hand. Her eyes glowed, bright and golden. The room seemed to shake. A pulse of invisible energy exploded from her body. The hunter was thrown back, crashing into the far wall. His armor sparked, then went dark. Silence. Only Jack's breathing filled the room. Lyra's hands trembled, but her eyes burned with fury. She had held back for too long. Not anymore. She dropped to her knees beside Jack. "Don't die," she whispered. Please don't die," Jack groaned, barely conscious. "I'm fine," he lied. She ripped open his shirt and pressed her hands to the wound, her fingers glowing faintly. "I wasn't supposed to use this again," she whispered. "Not unless I had a reason." You are my reason now. Light spread from her hands, warm and strange. Jack felt the pain fade, not all of it, but enough to breathe again. When it was done, he looked at her with wide eyes. You healed me, he whispered. I tried, she said. I've never done it. Like that before? Outside, the wind returned. Birds chirped again in the distance. The forest exhaled. The danger was gone. At least for now. Jack stood slowly, looking at the two hunters. Both unconscious, he walked over and removed their tracking chips, then crushed them under his boot. Lyra sat beside the fire, her hands still shaking. I didn't want you to see that, she whispered. Jack sat beside her. I'm glad I did, he said. You saved me. She looked at him, her voice breaking. I would die for you. Jack took her hand. You don't have to, he said softly. Just live with me. And in that broken cabin filled with smoke and silence, a new promise was born, not of royalty, not of duty, but of love, real, fragile, and strong enough to fight the galaxy. Sunlight crept through the cracks in the cabin wall. The battle was over, but everything had changed. The air smelled of burnt circuits and plasma, but beneath that there was something new. Peace, soft and fragile, but real. Jack lay on the cot, his side wrapped with clean bandages. Lyra sat beside him, her eyes half closed but always alert. She hadn't slept much, not since the bounty hunters came. She kept checking the scanner every hour, even though Jack told her to rest. He opened his eyes slowly, saw her there, curled beside the fire, still wearing the same torn shirt, her hands glowing faintly in the early light. Hey, he said, his voice rough. She turned quickly like a child caught sneaking candy. You should be lying down, she whispered, rushing to his side. Jack smiled, weak but warm. I'm already lying down. She tried to scold him, but instead she laughed. It was soft and shaky, like she couldn't believe they'd made it through. He reached out and touched her hand. It was cold, despite the fire. Thank you, he said, for saving me. Her lips trembled. You saved me first, she whispered. I just returned the favor. They spent that day repairing what they could. The front door was broken, so Jack built a stronger one. Lyra rewired the cabin's shield grid using tools she hadn't touched since her royal training. She moved with confidence. Now, not hiding her skill, not afraid to be seen as who she really was. By nightfall, the cabin looked different. It wasn't just a hiding place anymore, it felt like a home. Their home. Jack sat outside, watching the stars blink in the sky. Lyra joined him quietly, wrapping a blanket around them both. She leaned against his shoulder. It feels strange, she said. What does? He asked. Not being hunted, not running, just sitting. Jack nodded. Yeah. Strange, but nice. She turned to look at him. Her eyes reflected the stars. What happens now? Jack thought for a moment. We live, he said. Together? She asked, almost shyly. He turned to her, smiled. Yes, if you'll stay. She looked away quickly, hiding her face. I don't know what staying means, she said. My people never let me choose anything. Jack reached out and gently lifted her chin. Then let this be your first choice, he said. No one owns you here, not your past, not your bloodline, not even me. You stay because you want to, not because you have to. She blinked, her eyes wet. I want to, she said, voice shaking. I've never wanted anything more. The next few days were slow, peaceful and full of quiet laughter. They planted seeds in the garden. Lyra found a broken musical device and fixed it. It played old Earth songs, soft melodies that made her sway without thinking. She danced in the moonlight one night, Jack watched from the porch, heart full. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was alive, truly alive. One evening she brought out a small gift, a necklace made from wire, stone, and bits of shattered bounty hunter armor. She placed it around his neck. It's a protection charm, she explained. My people make them for those we love. Jack froze. His heart skipped. You love me? He asked quietly. She looked down, her cheeks turning soft lavender. I think I've loved you since you opened your door, she whispered. Jack stepped forward, lifting her face. Then it's time I tell you something too. She looked into his eyes and he kissed her. Not fast, not rushed, but like the whole universe had waited for this moment. After that, nothing needed to be said. They slept wrapped in one blanket, worked side by side, and every night she would hum an alien lullaby while Jack closed his eyes. The song always ended with one line spoken in her language. He didn't know the meaning, until one day he asked. She smiled and said, It means, you are my home. Jack didn't speak for a moment. Then he held her tighter and whispered, Then I'll never leave. But deep in the forest, unknown to them, a signal blinked red. Far across the stars, a ship answered, and though Jack and Lyra didn't know it yet, their love was about to be tested again, but this time, they would not run, not hide, not beg for peace. They would stand, together. The stars were brighter that night, as if the sky itself had decided to bless them. There was no music, no guests, no decorations, just two hearts, standing together beneath the open sky, and a promise that didn't need anyone else to witness. Jack stood by the edge of the old riverbed, wearing his best shirt, clean, patched, and ironed the best he could. His hands were rough, his boots worn, but his eyes were filled with something rare: peace, joy, love. Across from him stood Lyra, draped in a dress she made herself from scraps of woven fiber and soft forest leaves. She had wrapped her arms in glowing ribbons from her people's culture, symbols of healing and honor. And she wore them proudly, because for the first time, she felt worthy again. Her eyes shimmered like moons. She was no longer the broken girl who had collapsed at his door. She was something more than a runaway, more than a royal exile. She was his, and he was hers. They stood beneath an arch, made from branches and old satellite wiring. Jack smiled. It's not much, he said, but it's all I have. Lyra took his hand and whispered, It's more than I ever dreamed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out two small rings, not gold, not silver, just smooth stone bands he'd carved by hand. Lyra gasped softly, fingers trembling. You made these? I wanted something no one else touched, he said. Just ours. She held out her hand, and he slid the stone ring onto her finger. Then she did the same, her hands soft but steady. And for a moment, the forest stood still. Even the wind paused to listen. I don't have a priest, Jack said, smiling shyly. Lyra tilted her head. Then speak your own vow. He cleared his throat and looked into her eyes. When I opened my door that night, I didn't know I was opening my life. I saw someone starving, broken, alone. But you didn't just enter my home, you healed it. You gave it a soul. I promised to never turn that door away from you ever again. Lyra's lips trembled. She took a breath and spoke. When I was sold, I stopped believing in kindness. When I was caged, I stopped believing in hope. But then I saw you. You didn't just feed me, you saw me. You treated me like I mattered. I promise to never stop choosing you. Even when the stars grow cold, they said no more. There was no need, they leaned in and their lips met, softly, gently, as two worlds collided without noise. A kiss, not of passion, but of peace, of understanding, of freedom, of a future. They stood there in each other's arms as the stars watched, as the forest exhaled, as the universe acknowledged what had been made, a bond stronger than bloodlines, stronger than war, stronger than any rule written in stone. Later that night, they sat by the fire, wrapped in one blanket, their hands intertwined, fingers brushing softly. Lyra rested her head against Jack's chest, and for the first time in her life she felt safe enough to fall asleep in someone's arms. Jack watched the flames flicker, the warmth of the fire, and of her, was enough to melt every scar the world had left on him. He didn't need cities or glory or medals. He had what he never thought he'd find. A reason to stay, a reason to build, a reason to live. In the following weeks, they built a new section to the cabin, a greenhouse, a proper water system, even a small tower to keep watch over the forest, not in fear, but in readiness, because they both knew peace could not be taken for granted, not in this galaxy, but now. They weren't just surviving, they were living, laughing, loving, and every night, beneath the sky that had once cursed them, they danced, just the two of them, in bare feet, with no music but their hearts, and the rhythm of something ancient and beautiful. The rhythm of hope, because once she was starving, cold, unwanted, and he was lonely, tired, broken. But fate brought them together, not to fix each other, but to become something new, not human, not alien, but one and no one. Not bounty hunters, not kings, not cruel pasts, could ever take that away.